everyone, this is the new Lumix S1II, and in today's video we're going to be taking a hands-on look at this camera for both photo and video. As always, I have a heap of example photos and footage for you to look at, so let's get started. The Lumix S1II is a 24 megapixel camera featuring a new partially stacked full-frame sensor. This entire video is filmed on the S1II as well, with Dan mostly using the Sigma 28-45 f1.8. I, as always, have a portrait photo shoot to take a look at this camera's stills capabilities because even though this will be regarded as mostly a video camera, I actually think this can be a good photo option as well. So I want to share my perspective as a photographer, but we have a lot to look at when it comes to video as well. Wait. Before we head to our photo shoot, I just want to share a quick disclaimer that Panasonic did fly Dan and I out to Austin so we could get our hands on this camera early. These are sample units that we'll be returning though. Also, we extended our trip so we can go to Oregon as well, which Dan and I paid for ourselves, but I just want to mention it because you'll be seeing a lot of Oregon footage in today's video, which I'm so excited to share with you. But all thoughts and opinions, as always, are completely my own. I'll share the positives, the negatives. Okay, let's move on. The S1II continues with bringing phase hybrid autofocus into Lumix's camera bodies. We have 779 phase AF points, and for these tests, I'm using the Lumix 35 f1.8 with the camera set to responsive continuous autofocus with human AF in full area mode. I am completely letting the camera do all the work so we can see what it's really capable of. The autofocus for me in stills mode with humans is very similar to the S1R2, which are both further improved from the S1II. As you can see, it's pretty sticky and responsive with a moving subject, which we love to see. As always, we tried to give it a hard time during these tests, but it did a good job keeping up with us. I can easily rely on the autofocus performance for my professional work in both stills and video. Side note, look at my hat! Thanks to Cam Mackey, I got to bring a Roadrunner back to Australia. Thanks, Cam. When it comes to locked on autofocus, it did mostly a good job at keeping focus on the subject, but with it set to -3, which is the max, I would like to see it completely disregard distractions. We have the same array of subject detection modes as the S1R2, including human, animal, car, motorcycle, train, and airplane AF, with options to focus on specific parts of those subjects. This camera is introducing a new urban AF subject recognition mode, which I find is very niche, but I am sure there are people out there who this would be handy for. Now that we have so many autofocus modes, it would be great to see an auto subject detection mode, as it can be cumbersome always having to change it, or at least the ability to hide subject modes that you don't need to be able to cycle through the AF modes quicker. Throughout our photo shoot, I'm going to be sharing 100% crops of the unedited straight out of camera images. This way you can see the true detail and colors you're able to capture with this camera. I also have my edited version to share afterwards. Lumix have hit their stride when it comes to color ever since the S1R2. The S1II, although it does have a different sensor and a slightly different look, it still produces a nice range of colors and clear images. You might notice that the JPEGs have a little bit of compression straight out of camera. This is just a reminder that I'm using a pre-production camera and I don't have access to the RAWs at the time of making this video. Just like our autofocus test earlier, this performance was reflected during our portrait session. You can see in the picture-in-picture, the IAF is nice and sticky on Saskia, and the majority of my photos had critical focus. It was very easy to rely on this camera to get the shots I needed, and I can see it being a good option for portrait sessions and weddings. So I have my 85mm with me as well, so I'm going to be using both these lenses. I do also have the 24-60 f2.8, so if you want to see a video on that, I uploaded a separate review as well, so I'll leave that link down below. Get the leaves behind you. Speaking of, in terms of megapixels, I think 24 is fine for photo. For me personally, it's the minimum I would shoot with, but I do know a lot of wedding photographers, for example, who do like shooting around the 24 megapixel mark and don't need any more than that. If you do need a high-res image, Lumix do have their high-res mode. In the S1II, you can get up to 96 megapixel photos. But for some insight with real-world usage, I prefer high-res images. So during our time exploring Oregon, Dan was filming on the S1II, but I chose to use the S1R2 to do the majority of my photography due to the sensor, the colors, and the megapixels. So this is something to keep in mind depending on what kind of photo or video work you're thinking of using this camera for. The S1II shoots in up to
to 70 FPS blackout free with the electronic shutter or 10 FPS with the mechanical shutter. Since it does have a partially stacked sensor, it is realistic to use the electronic shutter even for faster moving subjects. I tested out the buffer with a 1TB ProGrade Gold CF Express Type B card. In mechanical H+, I was able to shoot nearly 300 images before slowing down to roughly under 4 FPS, so I find the buffer here is plentiful. Electronic shutter SH and SH Pre, regardless of speed priority or image priority, will give you a burst of 180 frames. I did notice that the buffer filling up was getting in my way of shooting, as it's not until you finish that burst of images that it offloads the photos to your card and clears the buffer, unlike mechanical shutter where it offloads while you're shooting. It took about 23 seconds for the buffer to clear the 180 images in electronic mode.
Oh my god, I'm obsessed!
The S1II produces very clear images, and yes, this little flower field we revisited when using the 24-60 because it's not every day I find a patch of flowers to shoot with.
It's so pretty with the breeze actually.
The S1II has the same build as the S1R2, and I will say this camera is super comfortable to hold and use out on location. There are more than enough buttons to set up custom shortcuts, and even though I rely on AF the majority of the time as a photographer, I always appreciate having a joystick for moving my focus point around when it's needed for landscape or street photography. This camera body weighs about 800 grams, and it features my non-negotiable for a pro camera, a flip and tilt screen, which is super easy to see and work with out on location. The EVF is up to 120 FPS in stills mode and 60 FPS in video mode. There is a quick dial to switch between stills video and S&Q mode. You have the option of recording straight to SSD via USB, otherwise the S1II has dual card slots. It has one SDXC slot and one CF Express Type B slot. A new feature I find really interesting is you can now copy files from your cards to an external SSD directly from the camera, which opens up some options to backup or offload files on the go. Another new thing they've added is the ability to remap the lens ring to different settings. So for example, instead of using it as a focus ring, you can change it to ISO or white balance, which is a nice quality of life addition. The S1II is weather sealed. Dan and I got our cameras drenched while we were in Oregon, and they continued performing as per usual, which is great to see. Okay, let's talk about video, because while this camera is very capable in terms of stills, I do think its strengths lie especially in video. As I mentioned, Dan used this camera heavily, and I will be sharing his thoughts and opinions throughout this segment as well. All the footage you're watching is captured handheld, so no gimbals or jobies, and with the waveform to keep an eye on exposure. The S1II is capable of filming up to 5.9K 60p full frame or 6K 30p open gate. There is a plethora of codecs and frame rates to choose from in this camera, and to be honest, there are so many that it's simply too time consuming to go through all of them in this overview review video. To answer the most important question, yes, you can film in 4K 60p in full frame with no crop. You can also record RAW externally up to 6K 30p. During his time with the camera, Dan mostly made use of ProRes and ProRes RAW, and while this does require more storage and post-production, the quality it produces is phenomenal, and it's convenient that it can be recorded internally. Just look at this footage! The colors, dynamic range, clarity, it just looks so good. We did film a couple of travel vlogs from our time in Oregon that I'm really excited to edit and upload for you soon too, where you'll be able to see lots more of this footage. And yes, Dan was super extra and filmed travel vlogs in ProRes RAW with total disregard to storage space. If you're curious, about 9 days of travel and filming all day every day took up 16 terabytes of storage. Nice. Anyway, the partially stacked sensor is working to the advantage of the S1II, minimizing rolling shutter. The sensor sensor readout speed is in the 9 to 13 millisecond range throughout the majority of footage you're watching in this video, as it is dependent on which codec, frame rate, and resolution is being used. Overall, it's great to see a fast sensor in this camera. While it does contribute to the stunning video quality you're watching, it's only one of the many factors that determines final image quality. We have dual gain ISO at 640 and 5000 in Vlog and 100 and 800 in standard picture profile. Please note that I didn't apply any noise reduction to the ProRes RAW footage you're watching, just so you can get a better idea of what the raw video out of camera looks like. This camera has 8 stops of image stabilization, and to compare, the S1R2 also has 8 stops and the Lumix S1II and S1II have 5 stops. The S1II has all the same stabilization modes as the R2. As usual, stabilization is just fantastic. It's also really nice not having to travel with a Joby or gimbal. I did actually bring my gimbal with me on this trip and it never made it out of my suitcase. Cropless still only works with native Lumix lenses, but it would be nice to see this expanded to third-party lenses in the future. I did notice in a few file formats such as ProRes RAW that e-stabilization options and hybrid zoom are not available.
So if you've got a flippy screen, I do a vlogging test. I don't make the rules around here, but this is a great way to test out stabilization. So right now we have image stabilization set to normal. Next up, we still have normal IBIS switched on, and I've also have e-stabilization switched to cropless. So walking the exact same path for each of these tests. Now we have e-stabilization switched to standard, again walking the same way. I'm holding the camera the same way each time. I'm using the 18mm f1.8 for all of these shots, by the way. Last but not least, we have e-stabilization switched to high, and as you can see, it does crop in a little bit. Although at 18mm, you can still see quite a lot of the background as well. But yeah, I'll walk the same path so you can see what that looks like. It is time to do a microphone test. So far you've been listening to my lav mic, so let's switch over to the internal microphone of the S1II. So we do have a little bit of traffic noise, we've got some birds chirping, there's a breeze that's happening on and off. Right now there's no breeze, so we'll see what that all sounds like straight out of the camera. Next up, we have wind noise cancellation set to standard. Ironically, the wind's kind of died down, but the traffic noise has picked up a little bit, so we'll see how much my voice cuts through and if it sounds any different. And last but not least, we have wind noise cancellation set to high. The breeze is picking up a little bit, the traffic noise is about the same. Also, don't forget to check out my review of the 24 to 60 f2.8, which I'll also upload in a separate video. I'll leave that link down below.
Unlike the S1R2, which did have some overheating issues in high bitrate codecs, it looks like these issues have been resolved in the S1II. To be fair, we've mostly used this camera in cooler conditions in Oregon and Australia. Only in Austin was it pretty hot and humid, but either way, through daily usage of the camera and even during filming the photoshoot behind the scenes for a couple of hours straight, we never had the heat warning pop up at all. I left the camera running for hours in ProRes 422 without any issues. Overall, both Dan and I are very impressed with this camera. While you can absolutely use it for stills, for portrait photography, the S1R2 is the standout camera for me personally. But when it comes to video, there is very little this S1II can't do, all while delivering extremely stunning footage. I really think these results just speak for themselves. Before we move on to the low light test, I want to talk about my favorite subject in the world, timecode. Look, it might not be mine, but it is actually Dan's favorite subject, and jokes aside, Dan and I are always looking for ways to speed up post-production, and now we can. So because I love talking about this so much, I am going to sum it up in just one sentence. You can now wirelessly sync S1II camera and audio devices such as a Zoom F2 or F3 with an Atmos UltraSync Blue and have them all match timecode, which honestly I do appreciate to speed up my editing time, as syncing files via timecode is instant, whereas syncing via audio is not. So just a little thing that I appreciate and I wanted to mention, but that's enough about that. Last but not least, I'm going to leave you with my usual low light test. These are all JPEGs with noise reduction on 0, which is what it's set to straight out of the box. This camera has a good handle on noise, the images are all pretty clean and only start to lose a bit of sharpness from about ISO 8-10,000 onwards. If you're still watching at this point, by the way, thank you so much.
That is all I have for today's review. Let me know what you think in the comments. But as always, thank you so much for watching. I make new videos every single week, so I'll see you all next time. Bye.